Hi everyone, this is Greg Hunt. I'm a mediator, a trainer, host of No Disputing That, a podcast for anyone with an interest in dispute resolution. In this series, I sit down with some of the leading names in the dispute resolution field to discuss mediation, arbitration, and other forms of alternative dispute resolution, which we also call ADR. We may even cover other issues in the law and in life in general. Expect some laughs, some honesty, and quite a few editing errors along the way. Today I'm joined by Will Chalmers. Will is the Chief Exec of Mediator Network and the life force behind International Mediation Awareness Week, or IMAW for short. Will, welcome.
Hi Greg, thanks for having me on the show.
No problem at all. It's really good to get an opportunity to catch up because you're so busy. Running around at the moment with International Mediation Awareness Week.
Yeah, it's non-stop at the moment, especially with the UK awareness offering happening throughout October and the last session on Thursday as well.
Yeah, good. Well, we've done one together so far, haven't we?
Absolutely, which we've done really well.
And we've got another two, I think I'm going to be involved in. Yeah, we'll do that in a moment. What I really wanted to start with is for you to give me a sort of a sense for what Mediator Network is.
Well, Mediator Network was born some time ago as a result of changes that we felt maybe needed to support mediators. We work with a number of our members, it's a membership organisation, but we are committed to supporting mediators from the point of qualification. So you're one of our approved providers, Greg. We take them from your point of graduation, from your qualification, and then we support them with lots of different things to help them build experience and their confidence in practice, buddy them up with different other mediators, different practitioners, and help them find a commercial way to build their practice as well. And the other side of what we do, Greg, is awareness raising for the wider mediation brand. So we work with a number of organisations and International Week, which I think we're going to talk about shortly. But that's one of those initiatives to push out this not the Mediation Network thing, but the mediation brand itself, alongside lots of passionate individuals and organisations.
Lovely. How did it start? Because you're not a mediator yourself, are you?
No, quite right, which is a bit ironic, I think. But I come from a legal background, and I used to run some years ago a legal advice service, which we set up, incidentally, with one lawyer providing one evening of advice a month. And that's ended up being about 70, 80 volunteer lawyers helping a few thousand people each year. But on the back of that advice clinic had a glass ceiling where we couldn't actually support anybody beyond the simple advice and guidance we were giving. And so one of the lawyers introduced us to this thing called mediation. So having done our research, we found out more, fell in love with the concept, the theory, and put a small panel together. But my background is really, I love business development and looking for ideas, initiatives, projects to push things together. So I think I hopefully that the team feel I complement everybody nicely to support the mediators, the practitioners, in getting their own businesses out there.
Yeah, I actually think it's a really interesting approach that you're not a mediator. I come up across in my practice, and I've mentioned this before in previous podcasts, the fact that I'm not a lawyer. And a lot of people assume that if you're a mediator, you're a lawyer. And I suppose in your case, people will assume that you're a mediator because you've run in a mediation business. But the two don't necessarily have to go hand in hand. It's about who you have around you. If you've got an issue that you need a mediator's opinion on, or an idea that you want to run past someone who's maybe qualified and experienced in actually being a mediator, that doesn't stop you being a very good chief exec of a business. I'm sure there are chief execs of some of the big multinational, very successful companies who haven't worked in that environment before. So yeah, I actually think it's a good thing. I think you give a fresh perspective and a fresh look to the industry that people who maybe have been in it for too long don't give, because we all just sort of fall into what everybody else is doing. And I think what you did at Mediation Network is challenging that a little bit, and that's really good.
Well, I think so, Greg. I tend to agree that if you are sorry, providing professional services, having gone through a qualification pathway, you're then sort of equipped with the skills to provide that service, and quite often don't come to the offering with the business development side of things. Mediators often come from another professional discipline anyway, so whether it be a lawyer or accountant or some other kind of professional practice, and those institutions, those organisations have this infrastructure already. So what I think is important when you're looking at a business like this is to think about complementing each other, and sometimes having an external outside view on something can really benefit, can't it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. So moving on then to International Mediation Awareness Week. How did that start?
Well, interestingly enough, I work with one of our mutual connections as well, Dave Owen, who some years ago set up the UK Mediation Awareness Week. Now, this will sort of date the podcast to a certain degree, because what we felt throughout the COVID pandemic, having learned that this week wasn't going to run, what we felt we should do was do something which sit alongside it, but certainly keep the spirit alive of raising awareness and mediation. And I think it was back in that summer, 3 years ago now, and the team and I just decided to do something a little bit larger, more interactive and online, so it's fully accessible. That then transpired and turned into what we have now, which is a multi-regional offering. And it really only works well because you have passionate people who give up their time. No one's paid to run the events, and sit there and help with the planning and putting things together. We have an international regional coordination team, and each of those members are critical cog in the big machine that is International Mediation Awareness Week, and they oversee their region putting on all the events. And this year it's 125 plus events, so something for everyone as well.
That's fantastic. That's so good, and it's so different to a lot of the other attempts there have been to promote mediation in this way.
It's
And sorry, part of what I like about what's being done with International Mediation Awareness Week is the thrust to actually engage with business. Because it's one thing having a group of mediators talk about mediation and try and promote mediation to each other. But what you actually need there is business and people being educated about the benefits.
absolutely.
And shines through with what you're trying to.
Yeah, we're trying. Thanks for picking that up, Greg. This year is each year is themed. So last year was culture. This year we're looking at a sector by sector approach. It's really important because it allows us to have a deep dive in terms of connecting with particular organisations. We're going to hear from the RAF, for example, ombudsman services, property-based organisations, healthcare providers, various organisations. And you're giving a talk as well, Greg, aren't you, on the travel industry? There is so much good practice happening, and part of this brand awareness raising element is education, and showcasing best practice and encouraging other organisations to pick up the baton and do the same thing. So it's really good that this year we're going to hear some really key players who are already on that journey in terms of implementing and transforming the culture internally within organisations.
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to it. I think last year when you ran it, I was on the periphery really. I think things were going on and I couldn't get involved too much. But this year, obviously doing a couple of sessions, but really also interested in some of the other talks and listening to some of the other people who are giving their experience about mediation and what it means to them.
Yeah, absolutely. We had earlier in the week, you had a conversation with one of your recent graduates, just to explore that journey. And it's very interesting because lots of aspiring mediators and newly qualified mediators still don't quite understand how difficult it is to carve out a practice. It's very competitive, but there's an approach because, as we know, selling mediation is a distressed purchase. So it's very difficult to go to a business and say, well, you've got a problem, and it is happening now, and here I am. You have to be present. And so those kinds of conversations with new graduates and where you can share your advice and guidance really help, but also they help structure conversations from non-mediators as well. Those are exploring, tapping into similar services.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so really looking forward to that. And this podcast is going to go out early in mediation, International Mediation Awareness Week. And hopefully someone might listen to it who thinks, so I'll jump in on that. So where's the best way for somebody to have a look at what's going on who maybe hasn't heard about it before?
Okay, we've got a dedicated website, and the website is www.imaw.org. In fact, if you search on the internet by our email, IMAW or Mediation Awareness Week, it comes up. It's got a lot of traction already in the short time it's been around. So head to that website. There is a page which says get involved, so to do that. And you can explore, navigate through the different regions as well, and drop the regional coordinator an online form, a note of expression of your interest, and get involved that way. We're looking every year for lots of volunteers because it's a packed week, Greg, as you know, full of mock mediations, keynote talks, webinars, ability to network with other mediators and other professionals as well, and also meet mediators. And I'm hoping you're going to be one of those as well, Greg. So basically giving the opportunity to everybody to get involved. So have a look at the website, see what's happening in your particular region. Not sure whether most of your audience here is as UK based, but the United Kingdom, Australia, Europe, across Europe, the Americas, Africa, India are the key areas that we've got events happening this year. So have a look at that. There's a schedule on each of those pages and a main schedule as well. All you need to do is, if you're looking to attend the events, register for free, look at what you want to attend and submit just click on the button. If you want to be involved and support the events this year and in subsequent years, as I say, contact one of the regional coordinators who will have a conversation and explore the best ways of working together.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. And if someone was to have missed a session that they were really interested in, will it be available for them online to look at?
Absolutely. And there already are some for the ones who held already throughout October. So head to the recordings page on the website, and you can listen and watch anything that's we've recorded. So after the event, there's a bit of time because there's 125 events to deal with, but shortly afterwards there should be, in quick succession, those events that we've recorded will be up on the website as well to listen to in your own time.
Lovely. That's great. That's really useful. Now, I do encourage people to get involved and certainly to take part. I think it's a really good event, and hopefully it'll continue to grow. Moving on, just want to ask you a couple of questions, nothing to do with anything we've discussed so far, just sort of general questions that I'm asking people as part of this series. And the first one, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about mediation?
Very good question, Greg, because I tend to I tend to get a different answer whenever I ask a question about what do you think mediation actually means. Mediation. Well, and I was listening to a talk this morning, and I thought it was a very good point being raised that mediation seems like a legal process to some that engage with it, or maybe resist wanting to engage with it. So the legality side of it is one misconception, because mediation, as you know, is a process where you have to come together on a voluntary basis, and commit, engage fully, in good faith to move everything forward. So there's no one quick fix, but there's no one mediator for one party, because mediators are neutral professionals, and so mediator, as you know, will support each party, and there could be two, there could be multiple parties, and that is a really powerful way of allowing each person involved in the dispute or the conflict to vent, express their feelings, and move things forward. Another misconception, I don't know whether you found this, Greg, is that when I spoke to some people, they say, "Oh, it's all about families and separation," and that tends to be the experience. If someone's been through mediation, that seems to be what the sector they've experienced it in. So when you then have a conversation with a business leader, as we have over the years, and you explain the context, give some context, people quite quickly can understand how that then is relatable to everything within a particular business or community sort of setup. For example, I spoke to somebody a month or so ago about mediation, and they had that misconception about a family sort of legal thing going on. And I explained, well, all the various uses and those the underlying skills that mediator brings to the table. And when you can sort of open their eyes, and you could see that they were then placing those skills, mediation skills, into different scenarios within their own setting, they could then see the value being brought to the table. And I think this is the part that mediators need to sort of start to grasp hold of, is how to talk about mediation. It's not, I don't think it's not enough to sort of simply explain a process. It's really about looking at the value added, the journey that you're on. And many people that go through mediation report back to us to say what they've learned about themselves, the other people, how to manage conflict. You've actually learned some skills, haven't you, along that way? And that is something that's of immense value to you as an individual, as well as in a business context as well.
This is what I was referring to earlier when I said I was really like what you're doing and how you're doing things differently to some others, because that's a real case in point. I attended an online webinar, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and I won't say who it was. I think it's all right, it was good. But the messages, it was about mediation. The messages were exactly the same messages as they've been for the last 27 years while I've been involved in it. And it was all the same sort of information that we as professionals in the sector have been putting out of for the last 20 odd years. And it really made me think, God, isn't it time this was shaken up a bit and actually someone looked at it in a slightly different way? And I think the way you just described it there is the start of doing that, I think. Don't just list the benefits to people who are never going to use it unless they find themselves accidentally in that position. I don't think that's the way to sell it anymore. So it's a good way of looking at it differently and giving people some different reasons to use mediation, other than just saying it's confidential or it'll cost less.
Yeah,
it'll be quicker. Because yes, they are great, but they're not. Yeah, I think time has proven that those types of things alone are not pushing people to mediate.
that's right. It's a classic marketing features and benefits element, isn't it? So, a feature of mediation is yes, it's quicker and potentially less expensive, but the benefit of mediation is all the underpinning elements, and it's when you can see a solution to a problem that you may have been suffering for a long time. That's what you're selling to the other side. That's where those people that are very difficult to engage with. It's about getting them to think. And actually, ironically, that's the skill of a mediator, is to help rephrase and then for people to understand and bring that level of communication back to into the table. And that's the same thing with selling the concept of mediation to non-mediators, is really having a much more open conversation about what mediation can do to bring benefit and value, as opposed to the nuts and bolts. I give the analogy of selling a mobile phone. When you talk to somebody about a mobile phone, you never buy a phone because it has so many buttons and it's got a particular style of casing. But actually what's inside, what it does, is the important bit. It connects you to the world. You can speak to people. You can go on the internet. You can whatever. But that's the point. So people buy it for different reasons, not because of what it physically is, but what it can do in a longer term sort of view of things.
Yeah, good. Spot on that. That's not an analogy I've used before, but I think I might steal that one from you in the future.
Be my guest.
One more question, I think. Well, maybe two, but just one more main question. I'm going to ignore the obvious question at the moment, which is about mandatory mediation. And I'm going to ask you instead, because it's more pertinent to what you do at Mediator Network and what IMO's all about, is if you could just give one main piece of advice that you would give an aspiring mediator today, what would it be?
It's interesting because we have this question asked in terms of newly qualified mediators. What I would suggest is this is what I say to all people that come to us, is to have a plan, to really think about what you want to achieve. Mediation is difficult to have a consistent income from. There are people that do have, a lot of instructions and are regularly there for instruction and have that higher level of income. However, the vast majority of mediators have kind of fits and starts of an income. So what you have to think about in terms of mediation, and the reason that is primarily is because you need all people around the table to say yes to mediation before it can happen. All right, that's the difference. In other professional capacity, other professional services, you're providing a service on a one-to-one basis with your clients. So if you engage with that client and they say yes, then you can start building an income because you can provide a direct service. So here's the thing that mediators need to really grapple at the moment, is that I want to mediate, but what does my dispute resolution practice look like? And where am I going to go between now, whether it's, as you've said, aspirational, so training qualification, because there's a cost to all of these things, training to become a mediator, building experience, co-mediations, understanding how to manage your practice as well. There's also a sales, marketing, the financial element of you're running a business. So I would say that the key to this is to plan effectively. So you need to think very clearly about what the first 12 months is going to look like. And at the point of qualification, you're not going to start earning lots of money, have lots of instructions, and build a very reputable business in 12 months. But you've got to use that time effectively. So I would say have a 2 to 3 year plan, which includes your investment in time and resource in training and experience. Be very clear as to what you want to achieve. And if you're going to enter into particular sectors, because as you know, Greg, there's the civil commercial, certainly in the UK, globally is known as civil commercial being one sector, workplace, family, and there's now special educational needs and disabilities as a growing sector as well, and a few niche areas outside of that. So rather than, and each of those, just to explain, requires a different level of training and input depending on which jurisdiction you're in as well, and all of that. So be very clear as to what you want to achieve. So my one top tip, if anybody's listening to this right now, is to write a plan, and it can be a 1-pager or 2 pages of A4, scribbly notes, that's fine, but where do I want to be in 2 years' time? what am I going to achieve in year one, which includes training, experience building, and the like, and how then from that point am I going to start building my practice. And we at Mediation Network are all about becoming market ready. Yep. So the conversations we have is rather than tagging on, and I know you and I have spoken about this before, but tagging on and knocking on the door of 100 different experienced mediators asking for co-mediation observation opportunities, think a lot more proactively, okay, and start building your practice from the ground up, and then ask for support. Yeah, I'm sure if you get an inquiry come through, Greg and the team or whoever you're in contact with will support you on that journey. And that way it works because you're building the contacts up. But that's going to be part of your, I say, 2 to 3 year plan.
Excellent, good advice. And again, a bit different maybe to how other people maybe give advice to newly qualified mediators, which I do like. That's great. So one final question, Will, and it's putting it back to me a little bit. Is there anything you want to ask me?
Well, Greg, it's interesting because we've done a few things together over the years, which has been amazing. One thing we're going to be discussing at the next international panel debate on Thursday is what collectively organisations and individuals, practitioners think the vision for the future of mediation and engagement is amongst different sectors. So my question to you, putting you on the spot a little bit now, is if you were to sort of fast forward to the next 5 years, maybe the next decade, where do you see mediation in terms of institutional uptake and engagement?
Good question. I'll give you, I suppose, an aspiration and a cynic. The aspirational answer would be that there's lots of positive noise about mediation at the moment. We've not talked about mandatory mediation because we've not got the time. That's almost like a podcast on its own, I think. If it works, and it's initially for smaller claims, but then it's extended and brought in to be more of the natural thing for people to do when they've got larger disputes and more commercial disputes, then I can see a great future for mediation in 5 years' time. Otherwise, what's the point in being in the business? And for me, I've been doing this in this environment now for 27 years, and I would say, arbitration has been stable throughout that whole process, the whole time period. Construction adjudication came in; it's been pretty stable since construction adjudication came in. Mediation is always on the cusp of being great. It's whether it was 5 years ago or 15 years ago, mediation's always on the cusp, and it never quite gets over the top of the hill and makes it into the mainstream. So I think it just needs some luck. It needs some good support. It needs some government support as well. On the civil commercial side, we see about vouchers for family mediation, for example, and that's fantastic. That you can get, I think it's £500 voucher from the government for a family mediation. If they did the same for commercial mediation, civil and commercial, it would take so many people out of the courts, and the amount of mediation would increase massively if they did a similar thing there. So yes, it's a lot of money, I suppose, at the outset, but the savings that it would make would be significant. So I think the future is positive. The cynic in me could say, you could ask me that question in 5 years' time, and we won't have moved on at all, largely because there's still a massive education gap in terms of what mediation is and how it can benefit individuals, but civil claims, but also in business. And maybe for businesses to be able to be more educated themselves so they can try and sort out problems before they start the litigation process.
Absolutely. I love that sort of that vision that you have as well. So I think I pull this back into another kind of semi-question. It's all about accountability. And at the moment, we have a number of leading, and lots of other organisations. You mentioned, and I believe also, it's an educational journey and there's some campaigning needed. But what I think at the moment is there's lots of good work happening in a silo fashion. And I think should be some accountability where people representing these organisations come together. I've spoken to lots of people who are already very well connected with some leading non-mediation organisations. And there's some work going on, which I think if we came together on, I think would start seeing that wave of change, which is needed. And so the shift will come when we as a sector decide to work together, more collegiately, and actually and bring to the table that the campaigns about mediation as a brand, it's got to be seen as a brand, rather than individual entities operating on their own. And when we do that, I do think things will change, definitely, without question. But it's down to accountability. So part of the result of this conversation on Thursday with these leading organisations is about starting to etch at something which shows accountability, at least for each on an annual basis. What are we all going to do together? How are we going to make it work? And how are we actually going to carve out some actual concrete future for mediation?
I think you're perfectly right, and I don't know exactly what the environment is at the moment compared to in the past. But I very much was aware when I worked in some of the biggest ADR providers, and the real sort of, on the face of it, people say they're happy to talk and to collaborate, but actually the mediation sector is a very, very competitive sector within the different bodies involved in it. And getting everybody around the table and agreeing to do things that has benefit for everyone rather than benefit for one organisation is really difficult. And I would love to see, one thing maybe to slightly skew your question, I would love to see a time when the whole industry could just come together and say, right, if we can just get the best education, the best marketing outlet, mediation as a group, we will all benefit so much that it will override any negative sort of aspects of working together.
Yeah.
Actually, there's so much to do that if everyone worked together for a year and just said, right, we're going to really, really go for this, we're going to really have a push, we're going to use joint resources, we're going to promote the business, promote the consumer groups or whatever it might be, that everyone will benefit massively from it. But the reality is people don't generally do that.
And that, unfortunately, is the biggest stumbling block, isn't it? And so things like the International Awareness Week is a way that we come together. So what we've introduced, Greg, are these event partnership positions. So we've now got in situ some of these large leading organisations who ordinarily wouldn't work together, but now there's a common cause, and the common cause is the International Mediation Awareness Week. So the role, the responsibility of these organisations will be to lead, strategise, and steer that ship of that campaign into the future. And I think that's at the moment that's what's been the missing link. Is that there's no reason to get together apart from wanting more work, more opportunities. This is something I feel certainly that should bring certainly the ones we've been talking to together, those larger organisations that have the resources to invest in promoting the brand itself as opposed to just their own.
Well, hopefully that will be a success, and when we're having a repeat of this in 5 years' time, we'll be able to review how much of a success it was, and you'll be on your yacht, and with some amazing Wi-Fi connection, and allow you to join the podcast.
That's right.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, Bill. If any listeners want to get in touch with Will, you can find him easily on LinkedIn, other social media. You can email will.chalmers@mediatingnetwork.org. And what was the link again, Will, for the website for mediation?
So that particular link is imaw.org. So www.imaw.org. And then, of course, if you just type into Google or other search engine, Mediation Awareness Week, it will come up. It's definitely searchable.
Lovely. And what are the dates?
So the week itself is officially Monday the 7th of November to the Friday the 11th of November. And traditionally, we hold it on the first full week of November each year.
Excellent. But of course, the website will still be there afterwards.
Website's still live, exactly. Website's still live, and of course, we do lots of things in between the two the critical date in the year from one year to the next. So there's always an opportunity to get involved and talk about international mediation brand awareness raising and do things locally together with your regional coordinators as well. So don't leave until next year, for example. Have the conversation now. And we'll start planning as soon as this one's over. We start planning for 2023 as well. So we'd love to have some of your listeners on board with that as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Will.
No problem. Thank you, Greg. That's excellent.
Thank you for listening to No Disputing That. Please subscribe to hear more from experts in the field. If you'd like to suggest any future areas for discussion or to appear on the show yourself, you can follow us on Twitter at No Disputing That and send us a DM. Finally, if you need a mediator, give my management team at Arbitra International a call on 020 7936 7070 or email info@arbitra.co.uk. See you next time on No Disputing That.